Hey everybody, and welcome to Let's Pod This. My name is Andy Moore. I'm one of your hosts. I'm joined by the good doctor, Dr. Scott Melson. Hello.
Sup, man? How are you?
Good. I say good doctor every episode. I don't know why. I assume you're a good doctor. I've never been under your care.
I mean, I try to be.
I guess this might be unethical.
You know,
Can you have a dual relationship? Is a podcast co-host considered a dual relationship?
I don't think so. We're not married, so I think that's very good.
That's, as I say in every ethics seminar I do for behavioral health professionals, don't sleep with your patients.
It's bad form.
I don't know about the form, but there are 6 billion people on Earth. You can just find somebody else.
Sure. You were not a Friends watcher, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, so it's it's not against the rules, but it is frowned upon.
Right. Right. Yes.
No, just to be clear, it's very much against the rules
Of medicine.
Yes.
Right. So
we have a guest in studio.
We have a guest. So this episode is
right now. He's wondering why he came.
Yeah. So we're taking a break. Actually, we've wrapped up our gerrymandering series last week with Katie Fahey from Voters Not Politicians in Michigan. Now with the People. The name of the organization she's with now is called The People. But that was a great interview with her. Very interesting, and hearing about her experience leading that campaign up there and the change that they've had in Michigan.
You know they're making a movie. They made a movie about her.
No, for real?
Premiered at Tribeca this year. Documentary.
Hot dang.
Yeah.
That's cool. We should see if they can. We've got some friends that have some independent theaters here. We could have a film thing.
Do a screening.
So that's interesting. I also heard that Dave Daly, well, I think I said this, who we spoke with a few weeks ago, he wrote the book Rat Fucked. He has a sequel coming out as well.
Beep. I was late on the beep.
He has, sorry, sleeping at the button. He has a sequel coming out in 2020 to update about all the change related to gerrymandering that happened in 2018, and I know that Michigan is featured in there, so I'd be curious to kind of read his inside report on that. Speaking of which, I think I'd be remiss. I would miss something if I didn't mention that there was an article a couple of weeks ago on Slate that Dave Daly authored that he had audio transcripts, audio recordings, and then like written transcripts of a training that was hosted by ALEC. That's the American Legislative
Exchange Council.
Yeah, so it's a group that writes bills and basically farms them out to states. They're typically very conservative-leaning bills.
Think of all of the bills that have either been passed or have been introduced in Oklahoma in the last 15 years that have made you the most angry. And those are ALEC bills.
So, well, and we had reporting several months ago about the cut and paste bills or the copy and paste bills. This is them, right? So they wrote it, and then all the states have copied and pasted from them. Anyway, they had a training for Republican lawmakers about redistricting with like talking points and basically like how to gerrymander your state. And someone there recorded the meeting and then shared it with the media. And so Dave Daly was the author of that piece, and it was fascinating to see behind the curtain and like literally hear the talking points of people like, this is how you gerrymander your state. First of all, don't use the word gerrymander.
It was fascinating and utterly unsurprising.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was, and a little blood boiling. So, anywho, more about that later. This week, we're going to take a break from that kind of politics and talk about something that actually does have a connection with state politics. We're going to talk about athletes. I don't think we've had any sports-centered episodes, but we're talking about student athletes.
Yeah, I don't think we have either.
In particular.
Yeah.
We're very much like 538, who dabbles in politics and sports. We're just a tiny, tiny version of them.
There you go.
It's so tiny, it's totally unrelated. So in studio today, we have Peter Daggett. Hello, Peter.
How's it going, guys? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Peter, you've been a gymnast at OU, right? And also a business major.
Yep.
And so wrapping up your degree there. What's your actual major in?
Entrepreneurship.
Right on.
Yeah. This
is a man after my heart. Someone who's an MBA in entrepreneurship. So as luck would have it, Peter reached out to me a couple of weeks ago about doing this interview, and then I went to speak to a business and entrepreneurship class, and it was his class, and so that worked out really well. That was just yesterday, the day before we were recording this. And Peter, when you reached out to me, your pitch was, I want to do a podcast episode about student athletes and basically centers on the question, should they be paid? And I was like, well, I'm interested in this topic because I've read some about it. And so Scott and I discussed about whether or not this was related to, state and local politics, which is kind of our forte here. The very next day, there was the governor of California signed a law authorizing student athletes to receive income. And so suddenly, with something that I thought was distant from my mind and not a local politics issue, zoomed in. And then today, I was listening to KGOU's, or one of the local NPR affiliates, like weekly politics update, and KGOU, or no, whoever it is, with Ryan Kiesel and Neva Hill this week in Oklahoma politics. I guess it's KOSU.
Yeah.
Pardon me. I was listening to KOSU's This Week in Oklahoma Politics, and they talked about this issue on there because I think there's going to be some bills filed, and so this zoomed in past me all of a sudden.
Well, it's an issue that's gotten a lot of talk, I think, in the, certainly in the collegiate athletics world for a while now, with some really strong feelings on both sides. I am not what you call an athlete, certainly not in college. But
you wrestled in your early days, didn't you?
I was a wrestler in high school. Again,
wrestle, or did you wrestle?
Wrestle, and I was on the wrestling team. Again, I'm not what you would call an athlete. But it kept me in shape, at least in high school. But it's a really interesting issue. I'm a passionate sports fan, and as I'm sure we have a lot of passionate sports fans here in Oklahoma, particularly when we talk about football, would I think be the dominant area for like college sports enthusiasm. And the thing is it may not have been a local issue a month ago, but with the law in California, it's going to become a local issue, because what will happen is that California is the only state in the country that allows this. Now, there's going to be all kinds of lawsuits, and the NCAA is going to sue, and it's probably going to go to the Supreme Court. There's all kinds of stuff that's going to happen before this actually takes place. But assuming the law in California is allowed to go forward, that is going to make California infinitely more, right? I mean, like, it just makes sense, right? You're the top, you're the top star. You have the 5-star recruit, number one, college football recruit in America.
Right.
You want to play at, OU, OSU, or Texas, or you want to go to California where you can get paid, right? Like, I mean, it's
even
like,
for a lower division, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's not like you don't have great schools in California. You got USC, traditional powerhouse. You got UCLA that could be good. Cal could be good. I mean, it's not like it's not like you're going to go out there and play for nobody and make money. So the fact that California has taken this step is going to bring it to the forefront in a lot of other states, certainly pending the outcome of some of these legal battles. So it's it may not have been a local issue, but it is now for sure.
Dun dun dun. Well, on that note, we should actually talk to our guest and let
the one who has experience,
the student athlete who has issues, has experience and expertise in this. Peter, maybe lay it out for us, and then we'll just kind of bat this around for a while. How does that sound?
Yeah, so that sounds great. So in my experience, you go from you start out in whatever sport you're doing, and you have a dream. You might want to go to the Olympics. You might want to play college sports. You might want to, play in the NFL, NBA, whatever. And it really, it's difficult for a young kid to understand the difference between playing a professional sport and playing a college sport, because they see people, playing in the NCAA, and they just see all of the incredible success it looks like they're having, and they're like, oh, this is awesome. But when it comes down to it, when you start to think about it a little bit, those athletes are really not at all being compensated for their talents and for these things that they've worked so hard for. So you spend all these years of your life working really hard towards this dream of playing, a sport on a really high level. And then you get to the NCAA, and then you find that there's no real way for you to make money in your sport if you are not playing something like football, basketball, baseball, maybe even soccer. I mean, there's a number of other sports that have professional leagues, but I don't really want to talk about football all that much.
And we'll say for our listeners, you're a gymnast.
Yes. Yeah, I'm a gymnast. So I was a member of the OU men's gymnastics team from 2015 to 2019. We had a really successful run. We
Congratulations on like 2 national titles?
Three. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it was an incredible experience, and I wouldn't trade any of it for the world. That being said, I would love to tell you my thoughts on how I think that athletes should be compensated and the way that I think that the whole thing should work. So from my perspective, I see that the universities are giving so much to the athletes. And when a lot of people think about paying student athletes, they think, oh, the university needs to start paying these guys. But I don't agree with that. And I know that there's a number of student athletes that don't agree with that either. That's not what passed in California. That's not what people are talking about. What's going on is that people are, NCAA athletes are now going to be allowed to make money from their namesake, image, all of their notoriety. And that's what really is going to, in my opinion, allow both the NCAA and these athletes grow and prosper and really start to build a more equal and just brand for college sports.
So, like, if someone, we'll say you're a gymnast, right? And so, I assume some manufacturer sponsored your uniforms.
Yeah. So we at OU, the sponsor is Nike, but they don't make gymnastics uniforms. So we ended up, I believe that our uniforms were either GK or Turn, but they weren't official sponsors of our university. But, there's plenty of other companies that do, when you get into the professional side of gymnastics, that do sponsor athletes, like Alpha Factor is one of them. Turn does sponsor professional athletes. Sure. But, outside of just gymnastics stuff, there are plenty of companies that have sponsored incredibly successful gymnasts, like Chevron used to sponsor a lot of athletes. Blanking on any other major sponsors.
Sure, but it doesn't have to be like an apparel company.
Exactly.
Right?
It could be Wheaties.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and so the idea is that your position would be that collegiate athletes should be allowed to receive money from those sponsors directly, right? Because let's say Wheaties, like, you win the national championship, they want to put your whole team on the front of the Wheaties box. If they do that, if they're allowed, but they do that now, that money would go to OU, not to you as individuals.
Yeah.
That's what, since you're gonna have to edit this podcast anyway, that's what to me is like some of the biggest bullshit about this is like whether or not student athletes should be paid or compensated by anybody. Like, that's one question, but what is bullshit, and this does, not to like turn the focus to football, but that's the thing that I know like the most about in terms of how this works. But like, I mean, people talk about like, the money from ticket sales and all these sorts of things, but like, if you're right now Jalen Hurts is quarterback at OU, right? So like, any Jalen Hurts jersey that gets sold, OU gets that money, right? When NCAA 2020 comes out next year, and OU's team is on there, and Jalen Hurts is the quarterback, OU gets that money, right? And the video game maker, he doesn't get any of it. Like, whether or not, to me, there's two separate questions. Like, should the student athletes be able to profit off of their brand and image and likeness? And also, if they can't, should the university be able to? Right. Like, I think it's like, how do you justify that the university can make money off them and they can't make money off themselves?
I will say that I think that if somebody's going to get paid and it's not going to be the student athletes, the university should at least get the money because they can put that back into resources for the athletes. And that's a super important part of this whole puzzle, is that a lot of the money that the universities are making are going straight back into the athletes. when we say that student athletes don't get paid, it's not necessarily true in the full sense. They don't get paid in dollars and cents. They get paid in resources, opportunities, coaching, facilities, everything that goes into creating a top tier athletic program.
Well, and tuition, right?
Yes.
For a lot of them, right?
Yeah,
like
for a
that's
lot
one
of
thing,
athletes.
this is what, so, one of the things that and I have I don't really know where exactly I stand on the issue of like, student athletes being compensated by the university. I know that's not what you're
We've got
here
30 minutes to figure that out.
advocating for. But one thing that I, as someone who's never been an athlete at that level, sometimes have kind of bristled at a little bit is because people will say, well, I mean, these students, like, they don't get anything. And as someone who writes a very big check every month paying off my student loans, I say, oh, but they do actually. Like, if I had been a talented enough athlete in order to get my college paid for, that would have been freaking bomb, right? Like, I wasn't.
Agreed. And it is so incredible that universities are able to do that. Like, the fact that you are able to get a full ride scholarship to a major university, get your education for free, is so incredible. However, you then, for sports that aren't necessarily, ones where you can go and transition into professional, or at least do that into a professional league.
Football, basketball, baseball, hockey.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, pretty much.
golf.
Yeah. For sports like that, you then leave college, and though you don't have student debt, you also don't have anything in your pocket from all of that time and work that you've spent putting into this. So just to give you guys a little bit of insight into what it was like training as a OU men's gymnast, we train probably 26, 28 hours a week. A lot of that is voluntary. I think I have to say that so I don't get anyone in trouble. But it truly is voluntary. We work our absolute hardest and we give everything, and that's why we were able to be so successful. But 28 hours a week on top of school, that is, it's a full-time job. It's, when I say 28 hours a week, that's where what we spend in the gym training. But there's so much that goes into it outside of that. We also spend, 2 to 3 hours a day going in and doing rehab. And then we also have to spend hours in the day just resting. You can't just walk out of the gym after a 4.5 hour workout where you're tired and beat up, sit down on your laptop and start writing a paper.
Right.
It's nearly impossible to do something like that, and it's something that a lot of student athletes struggle with.
Well, and it takes a really significant toll on your body, right? And I know you recently kind of authored a post you put on Medium, and we'll share that in the blog post that goes along with this episode, so be sure to check that out. But where you detailed like the numerous injuries you had, where various degrees of blowing out your ACL, and even debating whether or not you should go ahead and compete like without an ACL. And I like read that line twice. I was like, I didn't know that you could do that, but I'm sure you could, and it's just like not advisable, right? And so there are plenty of people, and we do talk about this in terms of football linemen and stuff like that, where their earning potential is notably less than running backs and quarterbacks and all of that, but also like they blow out a knee their sophomore year, junior year, and then what they thought was their ticket after college is gone. And so then what do, right? They've got to fall back on hopefully whatever their degree is.
I was going to say this is one thing. And like I said, I have a lot of like, I don't know, I'm probably just an old grumpy, but like
old grumpy.
I would say, cause you're like, well, this thing that they had all their hopes on, they have nothing to fall back on except the college education that they got that should have gotten them a degree so they can go get a job like everyone.
Right, but you and I
who
both
is
know
not a professional football or basketball or baseball player.
Right.
And I get that, like, I get that a huge problem is that, especially at places where the athletic culture, I mean, and maybe this is the same at all colleges, like at all levels, right? And maybe it's the same for all sports, whether you're, playing in a stadium in front of 80,000 people or whether you're at a gymnastics meet where there's a few thousand people. I don't know how many people come to the gymnastics meets.
We get about 1,800, but
yeah. So, so whether it's, but like, so maybe it's the same kind of across the board, but like, I still like the purpose of going to college is to get an education.
So you can do what?
Right, so you can go out and get a job, right? Like
That does
earn money, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So instead of getting yourself, like destroying your body for 4 years or 3 years and then you can no longer compete, why shouldn't you be able to start building a personal brand as you are, a lot of these athletes, that especially ones that come to big programs, they have notoriety that's started long before they were in college. Mm-hmm. They had names that people knew when they were just a freshman in high school.
Totally.
And they could have been building a nest egg for themselves to where they can essentially graduate college and they're set up.
Right.
It's not that they're set for life.
Sure.
It's just that they are set up in a really good position to move forward. And, for somebody like me who's working as an entrepreneur now in an early stage startup, I would love to have been able to, capture some of that value as I was going through my sport, ended up with a sizable amount that I could take and put into a company.
Right. Totally. And I don't disagree with that at all. Like I am very sympathetic to the idea that like your personal brand that's based on your skills and your abilities and your success or whatever in the sport, that should be for like, I have no issue with that at all. I just get a little, as someone who like my like entire degree of like my entire like professional success, like hinged on like the education component of it. Right. I get a little, I don't know what the right word is, but like I get a little like
grumpy.
Yeah, maybe when it's just like, well, like they finished college and they went to play whatever sport and they got hurt and like now they just have nothing. And it's like, well, they should have like
but the should disregards the fact that we know the system is broken, right? Like also, I don't know, just say I had a bunch of friends in college who played football at a whatever D3 or school, whatever. I went to Southern Nazarene University. Very small, right? Like I was there.
It's something to begin, right?
It's a time to begin.
Right.
That was not a thing. I heard that on the radio like years later, and I was like, oh, I didn't know we had a jingle. So the football team started the year that I went there when I started, and I had friends that played football, but they were going to be like an elementary education major, and not that they're actually going to make any money at a small like D3 school in the suburbs of Oklahoma City, but let's say they're at a big school and they have the chance, right? Like you're the kicker at OU and you do all right. You've got some real clutch, field goals, and you have some like royalties from photographs of you that were sold or something. But then you do have a nest egg that allows you to like go be a teacher in a state where we underpay teachers, right? Like it helps soften the blow. And so maybe it makes, I wonder if it might, for some people, make the opportunity at doing something else that they would not otherwise do a little more palpable.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm not trying to say that, I'm not trying to like devalue like the athletic experience or the work and time that it takes to be a college athlete and compete at that level, particularly in any sport at the Division I level, right? Like I get it. Like it's a full-time job, like outside of class. I guess I just kind of hinge on like, it's a full-time job outside of class, right? Like, and I just, and again, it's not to say that like they shouldn't be compensated. I just get, I bristle a little bit at the idea like, well, they went to college and they played this sport and like that was supposed to be like their ticket and then it didn't work out. And to me, I'm like, they went to college, it's what it should be. And I get the reality of like the $mega gajillion a year business that is college sports.
$14 billion.
Right. Yeah. Like, But like what it should be is they went to college to get an education and they played this sport while they were there. And if that happens to carry them to like professional success, that's fantastic. But if it doesn't, they have their degree in business or what have you.
So I definitely agree that that's like it's a super valid point, because we are student athletes. We are not just athletes, and education is very important to a lot of us. Now, I will also say that it's very hard to truly understand the perspective of a student athlete. You know, I heard it a lot when I was at OU. You know, regular students would be like, "Oh my God, you student athletes get everything. You get so much taken care of. You always got people looking after you. Get free tutors, all this stuff." But what not a lot of people realize is what it's really like to spend 35 plus hours destroying your body every week.
Right.
It's not just the physical energy expenditure and the time commitment. It's the mental expenditure, because it takes a lot out of you. I mean, I couldn't just, like I said earlier, I couldn't just walk out of a practice and start picking up work on my education. And my education was very important to me, but you don't necessarily realize, unless you're in that situation, how much it actually does affect the education side of it. And I think that, although I will say that the education is the most valuable thing you can get as a student athlete in a lot of ways, there's still a side of it that, you know, that not everybody generally sees.
So I think part of the deal with this is the scale, right? That I worked full time through college, and the amount of money that I made doing like roofing sales, right, like pales in comparison. And I think this is the deal: is that there is so much money at stake. So I'm reading I have a Vox article pulled up that I'll put on the blog post as well, and like so as an example, each university that's in the Big Ten, there's 11 of them, just for broadcast rights, cable networks pay each school $50 million per year. So they get that money just for the privilege of showing their stuff on TV.
Oh, yeah.
They also have like, sponsorship deals with Nike and Adidas, like you mentioned earlier, Peter. Mm-hmm. And then you've got this so you've got tens of millions of dollars, right? Well, hundreds of millions of dollars. It's $14 billion across the country. And then you've got that trickles down. And so universities have enormous amount of income. Coaches' salaries have skyrocketed, right? Nick Saban makes like over $8 million.
Over $8 million, yeah.
Even all the SEC coaches make like $1 million.
At least $1 million, yeah.
And then like people who like run the conferences, which to me, I'm really unclear what that job even entails, but like
the commissioners.
Yeah. So like the head of the Big Ten conference, Jim Delaney, made $5.5 million in last year. The head of the NCAA, Mark Emmert, made $4 million. And so there are lots of people making millions of dollars off of the work of student athletes. And so I'm still thinking about my position on this too, but I do see maybe some parallels with long-standing discussions in this country about labor versus management, right, or against company, and that there are some people who are working very hard, taking a physical toll on their body, preventing them from, and in order to fulfill those requirements, they cannot do other things in life, and they're getting, $40,000, $100,000 in exchange, right, for tuition, right? Mm-hmm. So like it's not insignificant, right? It's more. I made $19,000 in 2004, I think, when working, or 2003 doing roofing. Not enough to live on, but all right as far as college standards go back then. But that's still a small amount of money compared to coaches, commissioners that are making millions of dollars, the university making money that goes into a stadium that's very nice, and it does. And there's a side of that, but I think the scale is off, right? Like, is it worth Peter blowing out his knee repeatedly for a scholarship. I assume you got a scholarship. I didn't ask.
Yeah, I had a full scholarship, and really, really thankful for that opportunity.
Yeah.
That's done so much for me.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So we got that, which is not bad. No one's complaining about
Yeah,
that, right?
Not at all.
But is the trade-off equitable across all levels of the organization? Maybe.
Sure, and I want to be really clear so I don't get like hate tweeted. Like I am not in any way standing up for like that system, right? That like that this is this huge industry with benefits that are massively accrue to coaches and administrators, and like I'm not defending that at all. And again, I'm not even saying that athletes shouldn't be like compensated. I'm 100% like in favor of them being able to like profit off of their brand and likeness and sales. Like I think it's complete bullshit that like if something has your name on it and it gets sold, you don't even if to your point, some percentage of that goes to the university to compensate the university for marketing or time or facilities, whatever. The fact that you don't get any of that is like freaking wrong. So like full stop there. I just sometimes in this conversation, I feel like not this like between the three of us, but like in this larger conversation we have in society, like it takes like what happened. Like I feel like it takes the tone of like, and these guys like and these women like they get nothing, and my contention is that maybe they should in fact get more, but I disagree vehemently with the idea that they get nothing, because they get tuition and they should get an education.
So that's like a framing thing then, right? Like some people are saying they get nothing. The truth is they get something. The contention
Not everybody
is
gets nothing though, or gets
Right.
something though. I think that's an important distinction to make, because
There are non-scholarship athletes.
there
for
are
sure.
so many non-scholarship athletes, and
Yeah.
when we get off the topic of sports like football and basketball, you get into sports, especially on the men's side,
Sure.
that are super undercompensated for scholarship.
Sure.
I mean, men's gymnastics, our roster is 18 guys. Between those 18 people, we have 6.3 scholarships.
Jeez, that's messed up, and it is true because you have like because I mean, what does football have? 75?
Football, I believe they usually have 83.
80s and 83 now.
It's something like that. In
For like a 110 guy roster or something like that.
it's 110, 120 something. I don't know,
Yeah.
in that range.
I mean, it's like 75% of the team is there on scholarship,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then for you guys, 25% of the team is there on scholarship,
Exactly.
right?
Well, and-
like does the football team need to have a scholarship for like 3 guys deep at every position, and yet you guys have,
Yes, it's I will say yes, they do, because it is incredibly sports like football and basketball that make the most money are incredibly important for the entire organization to survive, because men's gymnastics doesn't make money, even though we were the most successful gymnastics program in the country for the past 4 years. We still don't make money.
Sure.
It's hard to make money. It's an expensive sport. It costs a lot. Our coach is the most successful coach on the OU campus, and you have to pay him. He deserves to be paid what he's paid, and there's a lot that goes into it.
I bet it's not $5.5 million a year though.
No, it's not $5.5 million. Not even close.
Well, and I think, oh man, I did think, and then it just went out of my brain. I'm gonna have to edit this episode after all. Son of a bitch. Son of a gun.
Whoopsie.
Yeah, I had a really good thought too, and I cut Peter off to say it, and
It's okay.
I apologize.
It's all right.
Yeah. Oh, I remember now. Well, and the other thing that we're not talking about is the fact that state appropriations to universities, at least in our state, have been cut dramatically over the last decade, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 10 years ago, the OU budget, 63% of the University of Oklahoma's budget came from state appropriated dollars, and currently it's like 13%. So they've cut an enormous amount of money. I mean, they cut 40% from all state agencies, and so that money had to be made up somewhere, right? So I don't fault universities for signing up and saying yes, please. Like you can. we will accept your $50 million in order to televise our ball games, right? Like
You couldn't possibly fault them. I mean, it's a ton of money, and it does a lot for the student athletes,
right, and everybody else, right?
And
Like,
everybody else. Yeah, exactly.
I think it was OU, right? One of the universities was going to cut their organ, like a pipe organ.
So OU.
Was it OU?
Yeah.
So the pipe organ, like repairman major. That's not the right nomenclature. What was, but like, like an organ mechanic, right? And
Which
it's like
is
the only program in the country,
right.
so-
Well, it's devastating because like this is like the only place you can come learn how to work on these organs that are decades and decades old. Like if that's gone, there's no one that knows how to do that anymore.
Well, and it's it's somewhere along the way, right? I think we started expecting universities to be profit centers. And they're not. They're cost centers. Like
Yeah.
it's we're
Agreed.
paying money now that our state will reap in the future, right? Provided our state makes the other decisions to keep that investment in state, which is not always the case. Scott and you and I talk a lot about the value of the free market, right? And I mean, I think most of our listeners know that you're a Democrat and I'm an independent, definitely more moderate than you are on most every issue. But I also feel like there is significant value in a truly free market, and I would argue
Yeah.
there's no such thing as an actually free market.
I agree.
We attended the same business school. I bet it's the same professor that influenced us.
I think it might have been.
But the fact remains that this is most definitely not a free market system, right? Like if it was, then universities would have to pay, and I guess they do bargain on some level for the top talent, right? Like, but the power does not rest entirely with the athlete. The university holds a ton of power there, and
It's a cartel, right? Like it's
yeah,
not. I
yeah.
mean, it's not. Not only is it not a free market, it's the antithesis of a free market. It's
Right.
a cartel, and the athletes have arguably no power.
right.
Well,
But-
I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think that if we get into talking about, the actual university is paying the student athletes, then it gets kind of to be a little bit of a question of, do I want to go to OU, who's offering me a full scholarship and then $30,000 a year on top of that, or do I want to go to Texas, who's offering me a full scholarship and 60, even
Right.
though I'm from Norman, Oklahoma, and I've been a Sooner fan my whole life. $30,000 a year sounds pretty damn nice, right?
Right.
So I think that isn't necessarily the right solution. I think that's a lot of the reason why I don't think student athletes should be paid directly by the university.
You think 30,000 a year sounds great? You should run for the state legislature.
I'm for a college student.
I was gonna say
I guess I am a college student still.
that's at least 25 iPhones. Also, after taxes, it's not much.
Yeah.
It's a few years ago. I realized I did the math on, how much I make per hour and what an actual salary goes to. And there's been some really good tweet threads in the last few weeks about this, where if you earn 50,000, but you have a pretty typical student loan payment of $400 a month, and you pay $1,100 in rent, which is really nominal in Oklahoma even, and your money goes away in a hurry, right? Like you've got a few, literally $137 left over at the end of the month, pretty much. So anyway, I digress. Scott, check in with you. Have you, during the course of this conversation, has your position or thought process on this issue changed?
I mean, I would say mostly no, but it's not because I disagree with Peter at all, because I really don't. My main kind of area of, I don't know how I feel about that, is athletes being paid by the universities.
Right.
That's where I'm.
Which-
Yeah.
and he
And
came
I'm
in-
with-
which is
I'm
what
with
he's
you
which is like
100%
he's not,
there.
Yeah. But in terms of athletes being able to be compensated for their likeness, being able to all
Their
that
name that they own.
yeah, right. That's, to me, that is common sense. The fact that they're not allowed, when I say it's a cartel, the athletic programs, the universities, the NCAA, the conferences, they hold all the cards in that standpoint,
Right.
from that standpoint. And I think that's bullshit. I think if Peter, like if somebody wants to buy, what do you call a gymnastics uniform? Does it have a name?
Just uniform.
Okay, because like in wrestling, you call it like a singlet, right? So
yeah.
if you have a, but like
some people call them like unitards, or
Right.
the girls wear leotards. We do not wear leotards. We wear uniforms.
So like if somebody wants to buy a warm up, or like somebody, if he wants to be after the national championship and is signing autographs, like autographing a team poster, and it's charged $5, I think he should be 100% free to do that.
That's interesting. You brought that up. That reminds me. Former Let's Fix This board member Trent Rattery was also a former tight end for OU, and he had a while back posted some tweets about this, and they were like photographs of himself that he found on the internet that photographers were selling for like $1,300, $1,500 of him like diving, like making touchdown. And he was like, this was a photo of me in this game against Fresno State, and I scored this many points and this many yards, and this was a picture of me in this game. And he remembered all of it, and he could like give stories about it. And he's like, I see zero money of any of these photos. And it was like a whole page of photos.
Right. Like,
and that made it real personal to me because it was someone I knew, and I was like, oh, that's super weird. To my knowledge, no one's making money off photos of me.
Yeah.
Because if you've seen my face, you understand. But like, maybe I should wear a football helmet.
But that's that's bullshit. Like to me, I think the main thing that I want to see in this conversation is that probably just what you said, like more of a framing issue. Like it just really like. It just puts a burr under my saddle when people are like, well, and they just don't get anything, and I'm like, but they do,
right?
For the ones that are on the and that's where it gets really tough, right? Like the folks that aren't on scholarship, like that's.
I had plenty of teammates that were not on any sort of scholarship, though they got the resources, the coaching, the facilities, access to rehab. They were spending 30-some hours a week on their gymnastics careers while they were also paying a full tuition and compromising in a lot of ways their education because of it. Sure. So people like that, they literally get nothing.
Right.
And I think that that's a big part of this conversation that a lot of people forget is that there are so many student athletes that aren't compensated in any way.
Right.
I would imagine that a majority of student athletes are not compensated.
Yeah.
They may be compensated a little bit. A lot of the sports like gymnastics, you can get little portions of scholarships.
Sure.
But my guess is across the NCAA, across all three divisions,
most of
them aren't.
Yeah.
Well, that's funny. Like I mentioned a minute ago that my alma mater, so they started their football team in the fall of '99, which is when I went to college, and it was a small team, like physically in stature and in number. And coach would stand out on the lawn outside of Snowbarger Hall and try to recruit some of us, and try to recruit me on number of occasions. And I said, was there a scholarship? Because I had a small academic.
Play football?
Yeah, I played in my earlier days. And he was like, well, we can give you a couple $1,000s. And it was less than my academic scholarship. And I did like the cost benefit analysis of like, well, if we're a small team, we're going to get pummeled. I'm going to get hurt. How many hours do I have to dedicate to a team that's going to lose? And then alternatively, I could go do roofing, right? Like I could install roofs and sell roofs and make however much money and have more free time. And it was like a real cost benefit. I was like, sorry, man, like, good luck to you.
And I think that, giving people the opportunity to, even if they're at a small school, who says that if you're at a small school, you can't make money off your namesake? You can go and find sponsorships, local businesses in the area that you can represent. All it takes nowadays is posting out something on Instagram, posting a tweet, anything. It really doesn't, I don't believe in any way it compromises, the situation that athletes are in as students to, allow them to spend a little bit of time finding sponsorships and being able to pay for those things. And, a lot of NCAA, I believe that Division III athletes are unable to receive scholarship for
That's
sports.
correct.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you think about all the Division III athletes, I mean, yeah, maybe they're not going to be huge names, but if you're in a small school in an area that really cares about their D3 football team, you should still be able to go and get compensated for those countless hours that you're spending trying to perfect what you're doing.
Yeah, I got no issue with that at all.
Yeah.
Like, it's not. It doesn't. It's it doesn't. I mean, this is the cynical part of me. The reason they're not allowed to do it is because, especially at the D1 level, and especially in high profile sports, the university wants that money.
So that is another thing that I think a lot of people are overlooking with this issue. I firmly believe that if student athletes are able to be compensated for their personal brand and namesake, everyone, including the NCAA and the universities, will make more money. Because the athletes being sponsored by third parties that aren't already affiliated with the university, or at least them having the opportunity to, is going to encourage them to do things like build their personal brand. It's like
It changes the incentives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, if I was in high school and when I was in high school, if I knew that I had the opportunity to start making money just by getting sponsorships, through using social media, I very likely would have spent just the extra 10 minutes each day to post on Instagram, post a tweet, just building that brand, trying to grow my following. And then as that following grows, I start to make a little bit of money, and that's great. But then I come to college. That following continues to grow because I've already built that habit of, building my personal brand. And then I am now on a team of 17 other guys who have been doing the exact same thing since they were younger. And then all those personal brands combined into this incredible gymnastics team. What does that do for the university? It does nothing but good. It does nothing but bring more fans in the door, gets more people watching competitions. Mm-hmm. It does nothing but good. And this isn't just for gymnastics. This is for any sport. I mean, a D1 or a 5-star recruit for football, if he's building up his personal brand because everybody knows him and every school wants him as he's going through his high school career, then he goes to college, he's already a star. It's like
like LeBron or Carmelo.
Yeah,
one of
and
those.
while I will say you're not a real star until you've made it in the big leagues, and whether the big leagues are the NCAA or the pro,
Right.
that's up to them to debate. But them being able to come in with that size of a brand and size of a following does nothing but good for the university and the program as a whole.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a great point. I mean, that's kind of similar to the NCAA has resisted the idea of a college football playoff, right? Like we kind of have one now, like the 4 teams, but they're like, no, like we're not going to do it.
Yeah.
And it's like everybody's saying like, well, we have to protect the bowl system. Do you know how much more money you'll make with a 16-team playoff
Yeah.
instead of the freaking bowl system?
Oh my God.
Like, are you kidding me?
And you feel like they would since they do it with basketball.
Right. But it's anyway. It's a bunch of. But no, I think that's a really good point that you make. That like I would say I think that the fear on the part of the universities is that the money that they get from Nike or from I don't know who makes NCAA 2000 like who makes the games like.
EA
but
Sports.
but the money that they get from those entities, I think the fear is that if that's flowing to the athletes, that's less money in their pocket. But I think you make up a good point that like, no, the athlete's getting a piece of that pie too. Doesn't mean that it may mean that the revenue stream looks different, but it doesn't mean the revenue stream doesn't grow.
I completely agree. And then, you also think about people like Trey Young. So somebody who comes to OU for 1 year, he plays, and then he's ready to get his contract. He's ready to make some money. Why would he stay? Give him one reason to stay. If you could, it'd probably be money, right? You don't just go to the professional league just because you want to play in the professional league.
Right.
You go because you're ready to sign that $1 million contract.
Right.
If you can start making money while you're at the university, and for a superstar like that at a school like OU, they would have been able to hold on to him for at least another couple years, and
the amount of money they would make is
exactly
going to be a net increase. Yeah, that's true.
Exactly. And one other thing is there are also very major sports where some athletes are faced with the choice of, do I want to go pro or do I want to go to college? So sports like women's gymnastics, for example, most girls that go to the Olympics, they go when they are, between the ages of 16 or 15 to, 20 or around that area. And the most successful ones, all the girls from the United States, they're incredible gymnasts, incredible athletes, but every single time not every single time, but in most cases, girls that go to the Olympics for gymnastics, they don't go to college. And that's just because you see, it's an Olympic year. Everybody's getting excited. Everybody in the world decides to like gymnastics for 3 months. Yeah. And they're getting these crazy, $1 million contracts, potentially multi-million-dollar contracts, depending on the athlete. And then after the Olympics are over, that they win an Olympic gold medal, they go around, they do appearances, speeches, they do whatever for the next 6-8 months, a year. And then people start to care less. And when people start to care less, sponsors start to care less. And then they are stuck in a position of, well, maybe I should have an education. Maybe I made the wrong decision. But I've got some money in my pocket, so I guess I can go spend my time. I can go to college, spend the money. But I would so much rather go and compete in the NCAA. Like, these athletes, if they were given the opportunity to go to the Olympics, make that money, and then still go and compete in a college sport, can you imagine what it would be like for Simone Biles to go compete in the NCAA? I mean, she would draw in more dollars, just her, than, tons of NCAA sports as a whole.
Right.
I mean, she is an absolute superstar and without question the greatest women's gymnast of all time. But she couldn't go to college for her sport. It sucks.
Kind of messed up.
Yeah, I think so too. And, you see it all the time. All these incredibly talented young gymnasts commit to schools Simone was committed to UCLA. Tons of them commit there. Tons of them Alabama, OU. All the tons and tons of top schools. And then they go to the Olympics, and then they say, no thanks. Just because they have this incredible opportunity to make such a large amount of money in a short period of time. And, they're just kids. They're kids. I'm not all that much older, but I still think of myself as a kid. How are they going to know that the right decision is to invest in their education rather than the potential of a, $500,000 payout?
Yeah, that's true. All right. Well, I think that brings us to the end of this episode.
It's a good place to leave it.
It's a good place to end it. Peter, thanks for being here and pushing us into a different direction. That was a good conversation. I'll be thinking about this for a while.
Come on anytime.
Would love to. Would love to. Thanks so much for having me, guys.
You can connect with Peter on Twitter. He's at Peter Daggett. I'm at AndyOKC. Scott is at SC Melson. Or any of us are at Let's Fix This OK. Coming up next in the podcast series, we're going to do a series on healthcare. Scott and I are going to go to our roots. I don't know. We're going to go into that and talk about healthcare for a few weeks. So check your podcast feeds for that. Certainly a hot topic right now in Oklahoma. If you have any questions, you want to give feedback about this episode, please hit us up on Twitter. You can always email us at podcast@letsfixthisok.org as well. That's a great way. Just so you know, that email goes straight to Scott and I, because technology is very handy. This show is produced by Scott and me, and we are part of the Mostly Harmless Media Network. And something I want to start reiterating again is that decisions are made by those who show up. If you're not registered to vote, please get registered. Go to ok.gov/elections or hit me up, and I've got voter registration forms literally all the time with me. All right. Have a great week.